Recording in progress.
Board members ready?
Yes, sir. You should be well hydrated today.
I will be. Call the meeting to order. Call the meeting to order for American Canyon Fire Protection District for June 27, 2023. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Board Member Albadamos,
Here.
Board Member Joseph,
Here.
Board Member Oro,
Here.
Vice Chair Washington,
Here.
Chair Garcia.
Here. Next on the agenda, report on closed session, confirmation of reportable action. Mr. Ross?
Chair and board members, members of the public, the board convened an open session at 5:39 PM to ascertain if there are any comments on the matters agendized for closed session. Also confirmed that closed session item number 1 may be read in a comparable matter to closed session number 2, that is, matters relating to public employment performance evaluations authorized pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, position district chief. You then adjourned to closed session at 5:40. You concluded closed session at 6:31 and determined that the closed session matters would be continued to your next board meeting on July 25, 2023 at 4:30 PM. That would conclude the report unless there are questions.
Any questions from board members?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. We'll continue now, proclamations and presentations. Well, this evening, we are very excited and pleased to see our Fire Explorer update and presentation from the Fire Captain, Robert Rojas. I'm excited. This is great. This is our future here.
I'm just going to show you guys a little video of what the fire explorers have been doing since
All
they
right.
started in January. So this is basically a 6-month recap. So yeah, so we're gonna start with that female end, right? Now that you guys have been, now that you guys have seen what they've been up to,
Fading away.
each one of them to you guys one by one. So the first person I'm going to introduce is Jordan Nolan. So Jordan Nolan is the Fire Explorer captain. So before I start, 2 lieutenants, and then the fire explorers under that.
Okay.
So he is the fire explorer captain, 19 years old. The question is, why did you want to become an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I became a fire explorer to explore my options. I also wanted to learn about what it takes to be a firefighter and what a typical day on duty looks like. What do you love about being an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I love the camaraderie between us all. I also enjoy the hands-on drills that we do, which are very interesting, allowing me to feel engaged. What are your hobbies, or what do you do in your spare time? Sports has always been a hobby of mine, specifically basketball. I also enjoy working out at the gym, reading books, and spending some time outdoors. Next is going to be Aiden Avalos. He's not here right now. I believe he has football practice right now. Aiden Avalos, he is a fire explorer lieutenant, 16 years old. He is also the son of Captain E.J. Avalos. Why did you want to become an American Canadian Fire Explorer? To learn about what it means to be a firefighter and what it takes. What do you love about being an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I love that I was able to meet other fire explorers and creating friendships. What are your hobbies, or what do you do in your spare time? I'm always playing sports. Right now I'm playing football and lacrosse, but when school comes back around, I'm going to be doing track.
Thank you.
Next is Sergio Garcia. Sergio Garcia is a fire explorer lieutenant, 17 years old. Why did you want to become an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I joined the American Canadian Explorer program because I wanted to learn more about what it is to be a firefighter. What do you love about being an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I love that all drills we do are hands-on. It really allows us to learn all the aspects of what we're doing. What are your hobbies, and what do you do in your spare time? Recently, I've gotten more into working out, but it's still a little bit of a struggle to get myself to work out. But I'm getting there. But other than that, I really like to play games. So thank you. Next is Moises Soto. Moises Soto Gonzalez, fire explorer, 17 years old. Why did you want to become an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I wanted to learn more about the fire service and in the future become a firefighter. What do you love about being an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I truly love the environment of being an American Canadian Fire Explorer, connecting with others who have similar goals as me. Also, love touching and using all of the tools. What are your hobbies, and what do you do in your spare time? I like to work out in my spare time and also hang out with friends. Especially love watching any good movies in cinemas or on television. Thank you. Angel Torici III. Fire explorer, 20 years old. He's actually a fire explorer that was with us before COVID. So when COVID hit, we stopped the program for 3 years and we restarted it, and he wanted to come back. So here he is. Why did you want to become an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I'm planning on joining the Fire Academy soon, and this program is getting me ready for it. I am very grateful to be part of this program. What do you love about being an American Canadian Fire Explorer? How everyone is willing to help, and what are your hobbies, and what do you do in your spare time? And he likes to play golf. And last but not least is Alejandro Arellano. Fire Explorer, 15 years old. Why did you want to become an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I wanted to become a fire explorer because I have always had a high interest in the fire service. What do you love about being an American Canadian Fire Explorer? I love how everything is hands-on and that we are able to do the same thing as real firefighters. What are your hobbies, or what do you do in your spare time? When I'm not practicing for a sport, I'm hanging out with friends, outside riding my bike, or volunteering and helping with the community. And that is all of them. Thank you.
Robert, you missed one important detail for Angel. Angel just recently completed his National Registry EMT course and is certified EMT. So, that was something he put a lot of time and effort into, and is a very big accomplishment for him starting out his hopeful career within the fire service. So congratulations.
Congratulations, bravo.
We should. And then one more thing really quick. I mean, without the hard work of all the Fire Explorer advisors that we have in the department, so Captain E.J. Abalos, firefighter Preston Quick, and firefighter Davis Pratt have all put in a ton amount of their time. So if we could all give them a round of applause too.
Oh, yay. Good job. Picture? We take a picture here, just a moment. Yeah. No, I just want to thank everybody for this accomplishment. Chief Bellier and Captain Rojas. It's just, and all the staff. It's definitely a team effort to be able to impart the knowledge. The important of this is that we always have to think of succession. The service we all provide where we are, particularly fire service as an example, you always have to be looking at the next recruits coming in to the organization in order to be able to assure the level of service that we provide. And we happen to be very fortunate to have a team that works very, very well together. And that is a result of leadership. So thank you all in the American Canyon Fire Protection District for that achievement. We'd like to take a picture now.
Real quick, Chair, I think it's also, we'd be remiss if we didn't also thank Captain Rojas for his work, but
Well,
Captain Rojas started his career with the fire service as an explorer here in American Canyon. So, you know, an opportunity for Captain Rojas to give back, but as you said, the succession and the future of the fire service here in American Canyon's sitting in this room right here in front of us tonight.
no. Thank you for that comment.
Very true.
All right.
I have no idea, they're taking pictures of us. We're imposing ourselves.
His mom? Huh? Yeah. Not my side, but Garcia's are everywhere. Okay. Indeed, what a very proud moment this is. So, thank you. All the best. And another thank you, Robert Rojas, Captain Rojas. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on with our agenda. Any public comment? Items not on the agenda received?
No, Chair, we did not receive any public comment.
Okay, anybody online?
Yes.
Okay.
Justin?
Oh, there's Justin. Right. Can't hear you, Justin.
So my comment today, I just want to wish you all happy 4th of July.
Thank you.
Drive safe. And I wanted to shout out our chief. Good news is that the hill is cut down and very neat right there. So I want to see more cut down and make sure the fire's safe. So happy 4th of July and have a nice summer break.
All right, happy 4th of July. We'll enjoy the evening, yes, the activities. Okay, next is any agenda changes, if there are none. District members, I will accept a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Alvaramos?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, Board. Move on now to public hearings. Item number 14, preliminary budget for fiscal year 2023-24.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce our
Sarah!
What was that? Oh,
our financial extraordinaire, Mr. Campo.
Thank you, Chief. Chairman Garcia, members of the board. The item before you tonight is consideration of the preliminary budget for fiscal year 23-24. And just quickly, a quick overview I'll start with the monthly financial report through May, so give you an update of where the district's operation stands vis-a-vis the budget through May. And we'll take a look at the preliminary budget for 23-24. We'll focus on the general operating fund, and then a quick look at the other major funds of the district. We have an updated financial forecast for you, as well as a look at the capital expenditures being proposed for the year. And feel free to jump in if you have any questions at any time. So again, this is the kind of the monthly update through May. The board has seen this before. This is the look at the general fund reserves. As you can see, we're tracking right about a little bit ahead of where we thought we would be. So just to back up, the brick across the bottom is the contingency reserve fund. Again, this is equal to set at 20% of operating reserves, and that can only be tapped into with specific board authorization. The blue bar on top of that is the operating reserve, or the dry period funding, if you will. That's equal to 50% of the operating revenue, and that's needed to cover the expenses between property tax payment periods. We'll see a little bit more of that on the cash chart. The blue line is where the ending balance was, month-end ending balance for the prior year. Green line is tracking along with the budget, so that's where we expect to be at the end of each month through the year. At the end of May, we're at about $5.7 million, slightly ahead of the green line, so slightly ahead of the budget, the total column there, but behind last year. Right? And we've been tracking ahead budget pretty much throughout the entire year, and we expect that to continue on through the month of June. Next is the general fund cash chart. You see that kind of tracks the cash balances at the end of each month, tracks along closely with the reserve balance that we just looked at. You can see we caught up, that kind of the brown line going across. We caught up in April with the April property tax payment, so we made up for some, I think, slow payments coming from the county. The difference between kind of the high point, that $6.3 million where we were last year in May, and the $2.8 million where we were this year in November, it's about $3.5 million. So that's that dry period funding requirement. If we didn't have the cash to cover that period, the district would need to engage in some sort of short-term cash flow borrowing. Okay, next is a look at salaries and benefits. So kind of track those throughout the year. You'll note, as we talked about in the past, it's fairly straight line. Salaries and benefits are fairly uniform, throughout the year. We're tracking below budget, primarily due to vacancies and not filling the battalion chief positions that were budgeted to come online around January. Again, we're tracking below budget, and also there's no strike team deployments this year. Last year, we did have some strike team deployments. But we expect this to continue on, obviously, and we'll be below budget when we get to the end of the, through the end of June. General fund expenditures overall, again, tracking very closely with the salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits are about 82% of the budget for fiscal year 22-23. Again, tracking below budget. We expect to be about overall close to $300,000 below budget when we get through the end of June. In terms of general fund revenue, you can see those spikes with the property tax payments coming in November and April. Again, so that dry period really runs between April to December time frame. That's when we were using that roughly $3.5 million we saw earlier. We're projecting to end the year actually slightly ahead of budget, so about $122,000 more than budget. So combined with the expenditure savings, we should be about $414,000 or so better than we expected. So that'll put us really close to break even for the year, as opposed to where we thought when we adopted the budget we'd be about $400,000 in deficit. And that's just a quick look at where we are through the month of May. If the board has any questions, I'd be glad to answer those, or we'll move into the proposed operating budget.
Questions from the board? Seeing none?
Everything's pretty much tracking the way we thought,
Hopefully,
under budget.
Our guesstimates are working.
Yeah. Educated estimates.
That's a better term, thank you.
Okay, so we'll take a look. Let's see, pass that. So we'll start by looking at the general operating fund, and just for the, I know the board's aware of this, but for the public, this is where all the primary core services are accounted for. So fire suppression activities, EMS, urban search and rescue, mutual aid, the strike team deployments, training, maintenance, and administration of the district. In the other funds, we have the fire mitigation fee fund. Actually, this now accounts for both the voter-approved special tax as well as the newly adopted fire facilities fee. Those are intended to mitigate the impact of new development on the district's budget and prevent any deterioration of services to existing residents. And we have the fleet facilities and equipment fund where you actually move money into there from the general fund and the fire mitigation fee fund, and we account for the capital purchases and those sorts of capital-related activities. So those are the three funds that the district utilizes. So sort of the guidelines for developing the budget is always, to maintain long-term fiscal sustainability of the district's operations. We want to make sure we address unfunded liabilities, both retirement benefits through CalPERS and retiree medical benefits through CalPERS Medical. We want to make sure we're addressing the capital needs of the district, both in the current and long term. We want to utilize these long-range planning tools that we put in place where we can better understand the impact of decisions made today on the, where the district stands in the future. We use a financial forecast model. We try and look, always looking ahead. Those are good for 2 or 3 years, and then beyond that, it's estimates and projections. And then a capital improvement plan, so we can identify those major capital needs and expenditures looking forward. And as we talked about in the staff report, the challenge for the board and the fire chief at this time in the development of the community is being able to proactively position the district to meet growing demand from, anticipated development activity, but not put the district in a tenuous position in terms of fiscal sustainability. So it's a timing issue. And we'll see how that kind of plays out through the budget. So this is an overall look at all the funds, right, less the transfers. We have, and we'll take a look at each one of these funds, each fund separately. But again, we want to make sure that the operations are fiscally sustainable, that we're meeting the current and future needs of the community, and that the firefighters have the appropriate resources to work safely and effectively. Estimated activities for fiscal year 22-23, you see $9.2 million of revenue versus $8.6 million of expenses. Again, this is all funds, so not just the general operating fund. Projected for next year is $8 million in revenue, $8.7 million in expenses. The big difference in the revenues is the lease financing that we did last year, about $1.8 million for the two engines. And just a summary of the general fund operations, more specifically. Again, we'll have more details in the subsequent slides, but the current year, $6.8 million in revenue, about $6.8 million in expenditures. So again, we're about break even for this current fiscal year. Next year, excuse me, we're looking at about $7.2 million in revenues, so about a $350,000 overall increase, and spending at about $7.6 million. It's about a $792,000 increase in spending. So in terms of revenue, again, property taxes are the bulk of the district's revenue. We're estimating $6 million. It's about 83% of the total. That's an increase of about $412,000 from the current year. It's about 7% increase that we're projecting in property tax revenue. Fire assessment fees at $764,000. That's about 11% of the anticipated revenue. That's about a $9,000 increase. That's about only about 1% increase. And then all other revenues at $436,000. It's actually about a $13,000 decrease from the current year. And that's primarily because of the workers' compensation reimbursements that the district was getting last year. All employees are now back to work, and we're not anticipating any workers' comp reimbursements for this upcoming fiscal year. But I would point out the top two revenues, their property taxes and fire assessment fees, account for 94% of the district's operating funds. So again, as I mentioned, we were projecting 7% increase in property tax revenues. This is kind of a historical look at both the property taxes, the green bar, and the fire assessment fees, which is this blue bar across the bottom. You can see what happened during the recessionary period, but subsequent to that, starting in about 2015 through 2023, that average is about 7% a year increase for that period of time. 2023 being the 10th year in a row of increasing property tax revenue. I think it's reflecting both the housing in general in the Bay Area and the growth in American Canyon combined. So we're expecting that to continue on in the future. Okay. So on the expenditure side, overall spending for the general fund, we're projecting about $7.6 million. Salary and benefits making up $6.6 million of that, or 87% of anticipated spending. Services and supplies at $1 million. It's about I just mentioned salaries and benefits are that's an increase of about $890,000, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Services and supplies at $1 million, that's about a $23,000 increase. It's about 2%, and there's no recommended transfer to the facilities, fleet facilities and equipment fund this year. Due to the accelerated purchases that we've done the last couple of years in terms of apparatus and vehicles. So if I just remind the board that we talking about property taxes, that was about 83% of the general fund operating revenue, and all that property tax revenue needs to go toward salaries and benefits, or goes to support the staffing at the current proposed level. And then funding of supplies, PP&E, training, and all the other services, comes from that fire assessment fee and other user charges. But looking at the salary and benefit increase, so some of the major assumptions there are, the district being fully staffed for the entire year. It includes a full year of the 2 battalion chiefs compared to only partial funding for the current year. So they were funded for 6 months during the current year versus 12 months in the upcoming year. And this is also factors in a 3rd battalion chief starting in January of '24, assuming revenues support that move. A little more detail on the salaries and benefits. Salaries, $3.5 million, so that's about a $750,000 increase. And again, that reflects 15 firefighter positions, 6 captain positions, 2 full-time, two BCs for the 12 months and 1 for 6 months, a fire chief, and then 2.3 support staff. Overtime at $350,000, that's a reduction from the current year. There's no strike team costs built into that. It also reflects the full staffing I mentioned. So if we're going to assume full staffing for the entire year, then we assume a lower level of overtime. If that should not work out, then we'll adjust at mid-year. We'll move money from salaries and benefits to overtime. Retirement and medical benefits, again, reflect full staffing as well. That's it for salaries and benefits. Quick look at services and supplies. Again, it's $1 million. Legal and professional services at $335,000. Not much of a change there. I think property insurance may be going up a little bit more than what we have here, maybe about $10,000 higher. Dispatch services at $161,000, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but that reflects 2 years for dispatch services?
Yeah. There's been some challenges with, you may recall earlier this year, we updated a contract with Napa Central Dispatch, trying to catch up. There'd been some challenges with their contracts and invoicing. So this is reflective of bringing us back into level with them. There was some challenges. We were a couple years behind because of not administrative issues on their side, and this is just trying to correct it and get us right back to normal.
Does this mean that the 161 will drop eventually, or is that
Yes.
the new baseline?
No,
Okay.
no. you should see it reflect, essentially be cut in half next fiscal year. This is just trying to play some catch up to get us back square with them.
Right. I remember the discussion about missing a beat, so they found the beat. Thanks.
So fiscal year 24, 25, we should see that number drop back down to 65,000, 70,000, something in that range. IT support services, property tax, admin fee, apparatus repairs are expected to be pretty much in line with where they were last year. With that, we put this all together into our forecast. Again, you can see for the current year, 22-23, it's pretty much a break-even year. See, the last couple of years actually we're flat there, or the first 2 years in this graph, and then we see a dip in the reserve balance, and that's reflective of the full staffing, adding on the battalion chiefs. Some of the assumptions built, again, the brick on the bottom is the contingency reserve, 20% of expenditures. The blue area is the operating reserve at 50% of revenues. And then the orange line across the top are the projected expenditures. The blue line is the revenues. And you can see that blue line really starting to take off once development once it reaches full development in Watson Ranch, and then there's several other projects, including some commercial projects. So again, we started layering in the residential property tax revenue from residential development starting in 23-24. And then in 24-25, we start layering in some new property tax revenue from commercial development. And I think we mentioned the last time at mid-year that we used the information from the mitigation fee study to help us develop that commercial property tax revenue estimate by using that study gave us the average, or gave us square footage and assessed valuation by development type. So we were able to come up with an average assessed value per square foot for those different development types. And then we were able to use that, apply that average amount to the anticipated square footage of new commercial development and come up with a property tax number, and then layer that in over a 4-year build-out period. So that's the assumptions built into the chart here with respect to commercial development. On the expenditure side, we have 3 to 4% salary increases built into the model. But hopefully what this shows us is that, at build-out, we do have capacity then to address some of those bigger capital needs of the district. We're going to need another fire station. We're going to need another engine company. And I think this shows that the district will have the capacity to meet those needs as well as the apparatus and other capital needs that go along with that. And we can circle back to these at the end of the presentation, but taking a look at the fire mitigation fee fund, again, this is where we account for those development fees. We're projecting about $447,000 in both the mitigation fee and development impact fees. We think this is a good number. It's anticipating some revenues from the Watson Ranch development. And just for your information, but through May of 23, the district's collected about $400,000 in mitigation fees. So I think 447 for next year is a reasonable number. We have some interest earnings on those funds, and we're proposing to transfer about $300,000 to the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. But we're projecting an ending balance about $1.6 million in this fund at the end of 23-24. And fleet facilities and equipment. Again, revenue, we're projecting 351,000. Again, no transfer this year from the general fund, but we have the Napa Logistics Park funds, $50,000, and transfer that in from the mitigation fee fund that we just saw, $300,000. And as far as Napa Logistics, that was $50,000 a year over a 10-year period. 23-24 would be the 7th year, so there's 3 more years. And time flies, I know. Proposed expenditures are $746,000 for next year. Fleet at $191,000. That's for the upfitting of the 2 new fire engines, as well as the command vehicles. It's the safety equipment, lights, and all that stuff that goes into those command vehicles, and then all the safety equipment for the engines, safety equipment that can't be moved from the existing engines. Facilities at $130,000. That's $100,000 for station alerting. It's about $50,000 a station. It's quite an increase over what I think we were looking at last year at $30,000 a station. But I believe that company went out of business. I don't know if it's because they were only charging $30,000, but. And then the other $30,000 is for new replacement flooring at the James Road Station. Equipment at $80,000. That's PPE, personal protective equipment. Chief, was that turnouts? Turnouts primarily. And then the equipment lease, we have $346,000. That's broken down between $280,000 for the 7-year lease on the apparatus, the 7-year lease purchase on the apparatus, and $65,000 for the enterprise lease for the command vehicles and some other admin staff vehicles. And that's a quick update on the preliminary budget, or the presentation of the budget. The recommendation is to conduct a public hearing and then approve the resolution in your packet adopting the budget. And be glad to take any questions the board might have.
Any questions from board members at this time? If not, is board ready for to open the public hearing? Seeing no objections to it?
Yes, sir.
Public hearing is open. Anybody from the public wishing to comment? Do we have anybody online?
No, Chair.
Well, the order of business would suggest that we have received what we need for the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Oh, sorry.
So,
Board Member Joseph.
okay.
Did I get ahead of you?
Yes, I just had a couple of questions. And this is probably for the chief as well. In terms of staffing, at what point will we need to add another shift of 6 firefighters? And what's that kind of cost?
Well, I think we're going to have to time that so it coincides closely with the full development of Watson and some of the other projects, predominantly a lot of the apartment complexes, because more than likely the additional company would need to be a truck company that has the aerial ladder to be able to address fire concerns on multi-level buildings. So do we have a exact number or date right now? We don't. That's something that we're going to have to be monitoring very closely. We're going to have to look at different strategies. Do we potentially step into it, maybe add an additional person per shift to get us to a full shift? So that's something we're going to have to look at in the next couple of years. And then as far as costs, roughly, obviously labor contracts and so forth come into play, but, rough rule of thumb is probably right now, if you look at $3.5 million for operating costs for salaries, That's for 2 shifts, right? And fully funded of 7 personnel per shift, right? So you could take that and reduce that probably by half to get a ballpark number.
For another
But again, we need to really look at it closely to try to hit that sweet spot of timing so that we're not super out in front of it, but we're well enough that there isn't a degradation of services as development occurs.
Okay. Where I'm coming from, as you can probably imagine, is to add the 3rd Battalion chief, we're going to have to spend a year or two kind of catching up with our revenue stream. And it looks like that's going to happen. So then, you know, if you think of it, the command and control element is covered, because we're not going to be looking at a 4th Bat chief forever, I hope, or not, unless we annex Napa City or something, then we'll look at that. But so really, the next shoe to drop is we got to add more firefighters, and I'm just trying to figure out, and it's probably not so much time as development. You know, how many units do we have to build before we start needing more workers? And is there ways in which we can add a firefighter or 2 at a time versus, you know, we need to add 7 all at once, because that's going to
That
be a
that would be a
challenge.
pretty significant fiscal impact right at once, as well as just the reaction time of hiring, getting
Yeah.
folks trained. So that's something we're going to be looking at in the future and developing some different options to bring to the board. Is do we step it in? There's some other potential options, but I like the forward thinking and so forth, and that is something that we are considering for the future. We definitely have that on our radar.
Good, because that's how I'm looking at this. Is, you know, we know absorbing the 3 battalion chiefs is going to take a year or two, but what happens, you know, as soon as you catch your breath there, then we're going to be looking at firefighter needs and how do we anticipate that or absorb that as well. So that's what I'm looking at, is how are we mapping it out over the next 5 or 10 years? Conceivably looking at what's the city look like at build out, you know, how much estimated revenue and how many staff, and are those 2 numbers close?
Right.
Because if they are, then everything really is just a timing issue. And we have the cash reserves to manage the transition. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, I appreciate the fact that you're already thinking about the things that I'm worrying about, so I appreciate that.
Yep, no problem.
Good point. Board Member Joseph. Thank you, Chief. Any other discussion on this?
No, sir.
Well, we do have a resolution for approval if the board is at that point.
If there's no further comment, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2023-21, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District adopting the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2023-24.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Albadalmos?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks, Ken.
Move on to business items number 15, joint powers agreement between Napa City, Napa County, and the American Canyon Fire Protection District.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So many of you may recall that the American Canyon Fire Protection District and the city of Napa entered into a joint powers agreement several years ago, probably around 2008. Originally started for fire prevention services. Subsequently, with the economic downturn, the city of Napa was unable to provide those services. It's morphed. There was some additional chief officer coverage, some different things, and most recently you may recall, we leveraged the joint powers agreement for the medical direction for the our ALS, or Advanced Life Support Program. As we started looking at it, we realized that while there'd been several iterations to the Joint Powers Agreement, it was time for an update. So working closely with Napa City's fire chief, we started tossing around some ideas, had some pretty good discussions at the County Chiefs Association meetings, and subsequently where we landed was a new Joint Powers Agreement that really is less restrictive on what can or can't be shared, but really gives us the mechanism. And I think this is really a byproduct of coming out of the pandemic. Of sometimes we write these agreements, you never know what you may need in the future. So we wanted to update the JPA to allow us some flexibility, because we truly don't know what the future holds if we have another pandemic or so forth. We also, with discussions with Napa County Fire Department, they're very interested also, is just, again, we never know what the future is going to hold, but having this joint powers agreement allows us the flexibility to, outside of the emergencies, the mutual aid, the automatic aid that we share resources on a day-to-day basis, we're going to call it more the non-emergent situations, but very exigent circumstances, I guess you could say. So what we're bringing forward is just an update to the JPA, includes another agency, and just allows us some flexibility. So in the future, if we have certain needs that maybe one agency can provide that the other can't, we have a mechanism in place to request whatever that service or item is, in a way to compensate the agency that is providing that service or good. So that's really kind of the nexus and a little bit of the history of the Joint Powers Agreement. But I think if you look at on a global perspective, it's just another step in the fire service here in Napa County being able to share and help each other out outside of the emergencies. We're really good at that. I think we've demonstrated that certainly over the last several years with the incidents that we've experienced here in Napa County, but it's just taking it to another level and allowing us to have that flexibility in the future to help each other out. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Question from board members? Board Member Joseph?
Yes, I appreciate the explanation. My initial reaction was I was trying to think, okay, we have mutual aid and auto aid, so what's this? So I appreciate the explanation, and actually it does sound pretty good, because in effect it gives the taxpayers an opportunity to get better bang for their buck. If we have a piece of equipment that we're not using that Napa City needs or the county needs, it makes sense. It's slightly entrepreneurial because we get to charge an overhead, so it's kind of like the strike team arrangement. So all of which makes sense. So I'm glad you've updated it and allowed it to be a little more open-ended so that it can be flexible. And it reminds me, and I think our board chair will recall, instead of referring to him as the mayor, several years back there was this similar dialogue about public works, sharing public works across the agencies, and because they have a lot of heavy equipment that's too expensive to be buying one for each jurisdiction. So maybe if the fire services can play well together, it will be an inspiration to our public works directors down the road. So this is all very exciting, and I'm very supportive.
Thank you, Board Member Joseph. I had the same conversation. You know, it would just make sense to be better to be able to serve our communities if there's agreement on being able to share resources we have. So yes, that would be my view. Any other comment from board members? All right. Well, thank you for that. We'll open public comment on this at this time.
One other question. I know you've added the county. Did St. Helena or Calistoga, did they express any interest, or are they just on the sidelines for now?
It was discussed at the chiefs meeting with all the fire chiefs in the county. The three agencies that obviously are signatory were the ones that were interested at the time. We're certainly open that if in the future other agencies have a desire to join the JPA, then we would obviously welcome that. It just for this period, it just turned out that the three were interested in becoming parties to the agreement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any public comment online?
No, Chair.
Okay. Well, seeing none, we'll close public comment, move forward with further discussion, desired action as the board requests.
There's no further discussion. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2023-20-22. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District approving the joint powers agreement for services between Napa City, Napa County, and the American Canyon Fire Protection District.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Alvaramos?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, board. Moving on to business item number 16, approve establishment of the firefighter paramedic trainee position.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the item before you is, as you said, the establishment of a firefighter trainee, a paramedic trainee position. Really, the nexus or the for this is, as we've shared with you, in today's job market, it's become exceedingly competitive, especially for a smaller agency such as American Canyon, to recruit and hire paramedic firefighters. You look almost any day on some of the firefighter job hiring bulletins. There's multiple agencies, many larger. For whatever reason, it's very, very competitive. Something that when I started in the fire service, I never thought I'd see. I remember, lines of 1,000 people lined up to take a test for 2 jobs for a fire department, and now it's become very, very competitive. So the job description, salary range is something that Chief Campbell and myself have been working very closely with our labor organization to try to create try to find a way that we can be unique or more competitive in the hiring market. And one of the things that through our discussions we kind of came up with is, there's probably a fair amount of people that are paramedics that are working on the private ambulance side of the house. And for whatever reason, maybe when they went through paramedic school, they weren't thinking about joining the fire service. Now they have a desire to enter the fire service, but for whatever their life situation is, they can't afford to stop working to attend a firefighter academy for up to 20 weeks. So kind of looking around a lot of the fire agencies in Northern California, there's very few that offer, I'm going to call it kind of a bridge to get a licensed paramedic into the fire service. So the job description, really, it's intended for the time period in which a candidate is in the fire academy. The intention is once they successfully complete the fire academy, then we would roll them into a firefighter paramedic position. They would be sworn same salary and benefits as our current firefighters, but while they're in the academy, we would pay them less than a firefighter's wages, but still a living wage that is somewhat competitive. They would be considered an at-will employee until the successful completion of the academy, at which point, like I stated earlier, they would roll into a firefighter paramedic position. So really the nexus and the motivation behind creating this position and salary range is trying to give us another tool to be more competitive in today's job market. And I know I mentioned earlier, but I think it's really worth mentioning is the collaboration between management and labor to get this position created and get it to a point where we can bring it to the board for hopeful adoption and approval tonight, so that we do have that extra ability to recruit qualified paramedics into American Canyon. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you for the presentation, Chief. I think, it's, your point's well taken. Because we consider how we are going to be able to staff with the skills that we need and knowledge for that department. I just think it's a very creative idea to get there. And I think it would be very good for us to give this a test, see how we're doing, and maybe recruit the talent that we need. So I think the majority of our falls, you would certainly know the percentage, are medical calls. And we need the talent there for that. With that, Board Member Joseph.
Yes, I agree. I think this is a good idea, precisely for the reasons you stated. The labor market has just turned on its head over the last 20 or 30 years, and we simply have to be responsive to that. I think the Explorer program is another example of another avenue of getting good people into our fire district. So, but a couple of questions. The salary or the stipend, is that it? I mean, they're not getting health insurance, retirement, or any of that, or just a stipend, or
Though we're still researching that, they'll more than likely get health insurance in retirement. And obviously, because it's a short period of time, it's potentially only 4 months.
Right.
It's not a significant financial impact, but that's something that we're still figuring out. But
Okay.
I believe we're going to do that because they'll essentially be working over 40 hours, so they'll be a full-time employee. It's just the clause with them having the at-will status until they
Right.
complete the academy just
Yeah.
doesn't obligate us to benefits retirement after their employment period with us if they're unsuccessful in the academy.
okay. And then the other question is, how many are you envisioning to authorize?
So this is
Or
no, this is a great question, and I appreciate you bringing it up. This would still be within the 21 allotted positions that we have for the firefighters. So it's not an additional position. This is just an additional way to recruit to fill those positions.
I see. Okay. Then
Yeah.
that makes sense. And then percentage-wise, how much lower is the apprentice making versus the regular firefighter trainee?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. It's a significant savings. We had to be fairly competitive with the price or the salary, excuse me, because while we were working through this with labor and so forth, this has been a couple-month process. Another agency in close proximity to us put the same thing in motion. So we needed to match the salary so that we could stay competitive in the job market. So I think it's a little over $1,000 a month less than the fully firefighter pay incentive.
Great. And then, so the other concern is that, once I've gone through the academy, the market is competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, I could say, thank you very much, and I got this better offer from another agency. So is there any way we, short of, basic guilt techniques, is there any way we can contractually or at least create something that says you'll stick with us?
Yeah, an employment agreement
Yeah.
that specifies that they pledge to or commit to work for the district for a certain period of time. And if not, there'd be a reimbursement mechanism for the costs expended by the district to send them through the academy.
That would work.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Covers all questions very well. Thank you. Anything further from the board members?
Nothing further. If no one else has anything, I'll like to approve or
Okay.
make a motion to
Let's
approve
find
this
out if we have any
resolution.
public comment first.
Oh, we didn't
and
do
I'll
that
come
yet?
back to you.
Oh, okay. I thought we did it.
Have any public comment on this matter? Anybody online?
No, Chair.
And we'll move forward with desired action.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2023-23, a resolution of the Board of Directors of American Canyon Fire Protection District establishing a new job classification of firefighter/paramedic trainee position. Second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Albadamos?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, Board. We're now at Fire Chief oral report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So obviously, our fire hazard or weed abatement inspections are in full force. Would like to thank all the residents that have gone out and cut their weeds to be in compliance with the ordinance, but still have work to do. Still want to remind our residents that even though we've had extremely cool weather, we still have the fire hazard, so we ask that all residents do their part and help cut their weeds and bring in compliance with our fire hazard ordinance. Also, we had the crews out, and myself, Chief Campbell, Laura, all attended the first Meet Me in the Streets this year, which is always a great event. It's good to see that event seems to get bigger every single time we attend. So really good opportunity for us to interact with the community. I know that Chief Campbell and myself were teaching folks how to do hands-only CPR, as well as the crews, and some of our fire explorers came, and Don Marshall, and helped with that public messaging as well. So look forward to that again. We have the 4th of July coming up. We'll be attending as well, and also reminder and ask for the residents that please enjoy the city's fireworks and not their own. We want to make sure that it is a safe 4th of July for everyone. And then we just successfully completed our 2-week onboarding academy for our 2 recent hires, both firefighter paramedics. And also like to thank Captain Pilkington for taking the lead in the academy and really presenting and delivering a very high quality training program for those folks. Noah, his first shift is today, and Nathan's first shift was last Saturday. So we'll be trying to coordinate with their families, but we'll have a badge pinning ceremony here next month, probably at the firehouse like we have the last couple. Allow a little bit more time for the families and everyone to interact. So once we get that date established, we'll obviously be sharing that with the board, because those have been just great events the last couple
I
that
think
we
it's always a
have.
great moment for not only the recipient, but the families.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're still in our continuous recruitment phase. We actually have interviews for several candidates scheduled for this Thursday. So hopefully we'll find some candidates that we feel would be a good fit for the American Canyon family and move forward with that. So with that, just a reminder to everyone, please enjoy the 4th of July holiday, but please enjoy it very safely.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you to the board, and happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Questions, comments? I'd just like to add that from a public safety perspective, other jurisdictions have not going to have fireworks this year. And I recall back the year we decided not to do that, and all the chaos it created because there were fireworks going off all over town. And I think, as you know, the message sent to me, it's better off if we hire somebody to do that display, we have control over all the safety issues around that. It's not going to prevent people from shooting off fireworks. They'll do it, but it certainly was a lot less once we realized that we couldn't control it as well as we thought we could. So I appreciate that. Is there going to be a display booth contact for firefighters at the 4th of July at COM2?
You know, we'll have the engine companies there, but because of the potential for increased activity for the fire engines, we won't be having a booth like we did last year, just because we can't guarantee that the engines are going to be there to staff the booth. Certainly hope they are and available, and it's a quiet day for them, but it's probably one of our potentially busier days. It's kind of like Christmas season for UPS, right?
Yes.
So we'll be around. We'll be interacting with the community, but we need to be a little bit more free for emergency incidents than we normally do.
Very good, thank you. Any other comment from the board?
No, sir.
All right, well, very good. We'll move on then. Chair, board comments, committee reports, future agenda items? Anything there? No. Hearing none? Okay. Well, very good. Well, that being said, we have completed our work this evening. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good night, American.
Recording in progress.